From WAMU 88.5 at American University in Washington, welcome to the Politics Hour starring Tom Sherwood. I'm Kojo Nambi. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Tom, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Also joining us in studio is Courtney Snowden. She is DC's Deputy Mayor for Greater Economic Opportunity. She is the DMGEO.
That's right.
Thank you very much for joining us, Courtney Snowden. If you have questions or comments for Courtney Snowden, you can start calling us at 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org, or you can go to our live video stream at our website, kojoshow.org. Watch, listen to the program, and submit your questions or comments there. Tom, I did not know that there was such an official, or maybe it's not quite an official position in District of Columbia government as a permit expediter. Apparently, this was an individual who could get permits from the District of Columbia Office of, what's DCRA? District of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs, speeded up by offering what he called lunch money to a few employees there who so far have remained nameless, from $20 to $500, and apparently he's likely to plead guilty. Mr. Makumba Ndaye is likely to plead guilty to this, but I didn't know you could get your permits expedited like that.
Oh, there are people who, there are people who stand in line to get paid by developers and other people who are busy and want people to stand in line to get permits. There are people, whether it's a traffic court or whatever, people who will handle your case for you. And it's perfectly legitimate business. They get to, you go every day, you get to know the people, you know the system, and you can get things done faster than the person who wanders in and looks, bewildered by all the windows that you may have to go to. The difference here is this guy allegedly was paying bribes to get the permits. Now, I will say I've covered the district government since the late 70s, early 80s, and you've always heard that if you want a permit, you have to do this. If you want your car inspected, leave $50 in the ashtray, or those kinds of low-level amounts of corruption. How big this is, whether this guy is just a freelance cheater, if that's what he legally is, or whether it means there's much more corruption there, we won't know yet, but apparently the prosecutors are trying to find out.
It falls under the heading of greater economic opportunity for the people for the people who are receiving.
But expediting is a very good thing. I mean, there are people who do that, and they know what they're doing, and it's a legitimate part of the business. Except
that in this case, it was perfectly illegal.
Well, according to the allegation, yeah.
What he was doing, and as I said, the likelihood is that he's going to plead guilty in this situ. Now, on to the 800-pound gorilla in every room in Washington, Metro, once again admitting that, mistakes were made, that Metro apparently knew as early as July 9th that tracks were not aligned properly, and that led to last week's derailment of a non-passenger train near the Smithsonian Station. Nothing was done about it in that month. Terminations may be forthcoming, but it just adds to the list of grievances people have about this organization that is now without permanent leadership, that now is not still fully funded. And what do you say?
Well, I've said it before in different ways. I'll say it again today. The problem with Metro is not about any individual incident. It's a potpourri of problems that manifest themselves every day with something different, whether it's single tracking for this or that, or why it's smoke, or brakes not working, or failure to respond. In this case, it's particularly egregious that the organization knew about faulty tracks, and for all the times they closed the tracks, I don't know why it wasn't fixed, but the track was too wide for the wheels of the train, and it could have been a train loaded with people. Martin DeCaro, I think, said in one of their programs, it could have been filled with people, and it could have been horrific. And then we'll come up a month or so later, oh, well, we knew about it, but we didn't fix it. It demands for the Maryland, the district, and Virginia, and the federal government to change the operation of Metro, or we need to change something there. to make it work. It's just ridiculous.
I still carry my Smart Trip card. Courtney Snowden, do you ride Metro in the District of Columbia?
I don't ride Metro on a regular basis in the district.
Why not?
Only because I live east of the river, and like so many residents of east of the river, my son goes to school in a different ward, and I live in Ward 8, I live in Ward 7, work in Ward 8, and sometimes travel to Ward 4. So I have to be able to do that quickly, and Metro is just not fast enough yet. But I know a number of our residents rely on Metro, and it needs to be safe.
And here's my bottom line on this. The chain of command has gone off the tracks, and it just needs to be fixed. If I can.
Yes, the chain of command clearly has gone off the tracks with Metro. I mentioned earlier, our guest is Courtney Snowden. She is DC Deputy Mayor for Greater Economic Opportunity. You can have, if you have questions or comments for her, if you're interested in exactly what that title even means, call us at 800.
Well, we're still wondering.
433. Before we get to that specifically, Tom, I think you covered this story this week. Wind power is going to is apparently driving a significant part of 1/3 of the DC government's electricity needs. And while the $45 million that the city government will be saving in its electric bills over the next 20 years, well, why should we care? Because none of that is apparently being passed on to consumers.
Well, it might be. The plan is there's a big wind farm in Pennsylvania. I thought they were going to. I have to say, I thought when they were going to announce this that they were going to put like wind turbines on tops of buildings, and we're going to have all these things. But no, it's a wind farm in Pennsylvania near Altoona, and we with this company whose name I can't pronounce. 35% of the energy costs coming to the district government will be done through this wind power. It will save something, we're told, about $45 million over 20 years, a little about $2 million a year. And that will help the city government. I didn't realize the mayor said the other day when she announced it, there's something like 80 million square feet of space that's run by the city, where the government buildings, libraries, police stations, all these things, and they all depend on energy. And so it's a good thing for the city. The Sierra Club.
Wait a minute. The mayor actually told you something you didn't know as long as you've been covering
I did not know it was 80 million.
I swear.
And I'm not even.
That's the first thing in all of the years we've been doing this show together that he's admitted not knowing something about the city.
I acknowledge when I don't have the information I should have. The Sierra Club said, well, if you can save money by doing 35% of your energy costs, well, why not do 100%? So we asked that question, and mayor's response and government, whatever the new agency is that runs these things, said, well, we're just sticking our toes in here to get started, but we could possibly have more as we go forward and save more energy. But, the city has really gotten national attention for its solar power, its green roofs, its energy efficient buildings. So across the board, the city, and I must give Vince Gray, the former mayor, a lot of credit for that. The city is being much more green than many other jurisdictions of its similar size.
Is Livable Walkable Tommy Wells the person who runs the aforementioned agency that you just mentioned?
Well, he is there, but a lot of these policies predate him. He still has to prove himself.
He is the director of the DC Department of Energy and Environment, former city council member representing Ward 6. He's going to be on this broadcast come Monday.
I thought you were going to say he's on the phone.
He probably will be if you keep mentioning his name, but he'll be here in person on Monday. Courtney Snowden, Mayor Browser named you to the position of Deputy Mayor for Greater Economic Opportunity in April. It's a newly created position. What do you do? What's the idea?
It's a great question, and one that I get asked quite a bit. We heard the mayor talk about on the campaign trail a deputy mayor for East of the River Affairs. And what is true is that position, as she went to create it and implement the idea, she realized that the deputy mayor really needed to focus on creating and expanding economic opportunity. We've seen prosperity occur throughout this city, but there are a number of neighborhoods that have been overlooked and underserved by government and certainly have not been touched yet by the prosperity. So my job is to do a couple of things. One, expand economic opportunity to overlooked and underserved communities and put our residents back to work, be it through the work that we do with the Department of Employment Services or the Department of Local Small Business Development.
It took you less than 60 seconds to say something that the city has not been able to accomplish during the
right.
course of the past several decades.
That's right.
What's the long-term view here of how you accomplish
Yeah,
this?
so the mayor really was a visionary when she created this position, and I'm so proud to be working with her in this administration and
that's enough compliments to the
and
mayor.
implementing her vision. It's important to note, though, because many mayors have talked about this across the country and in the city, but haven't really put their money where their mouth was. And this mayor absolutely has done that. So what we're going to do some innovative things. We're going to bring services into communities to allow residents to get connected to training and adult education. The mayor, as you know, expanded the summer youth employment program to 22 to 24-year-olds, which has had a really significant impact on the lives of young people who we're working to put on the pathway to the middle class, as we are with residents throughout this city. And programs like that will really help to get our young people in particular on a pathway to the middle class, but more importantly, will give them the work experience they need to be successful.
Let's talk about the Department of Employment Services.
Let's.
I've said on this program and in other places that it needs a shakeup, much like Michelle Reed did to the DC school system. Whether you like what she did or didn't do, she certainly changed the course of the direction of it. And Kai Henderson has continued to do that. It seems to me the Department of Employment Services can't tell us who gets jobs, who gets training, who gets a job that lasts longer than 6 months. Why can't the director of the Department of Employment Services do that? Why does it take a deputy mayor? And what you've been there 4 months. What have you done?
I was waiting for that question from you, Tom. I've been expecting it and excited to tell you. So the mayor, as you know, talked a lot on the campaign trail about the $100 million, more than, in fact, that the city spends on workforce training and development and work readiness programs. And she, like so many of us, you and I have talked about this over the last year, recognize that DOES has been an ineffective partner in moving employment opportunities forward. She appointed a fantastic director, Director Deborah Carroll, who used to be at Human Services, who's now come in to really shake things up at the Department of Employment Services, and she's doing incredibly important work there. But you know, what I think the mayor did with the creation of this position is really elevate the conversation and the intentionality around working on creating a comprehensive workforce system.
Intentionality.
Okay. We're being very intentional here.
My bureaucratic monitor is starting to go off.
Well, hold on. Let's talk about
mine stopped at intentional. You add 2 more syllables to that, we're lost. Good.
I mean, I think here's the reality. The city has not focused on making sure that we're expanding economic and employment opportunity throughout the city, and in particular to those communities that have been overlooked and underserved. So what Director Deb Carroll, under my leadership and most certainly under the mayor's leadership, is really thinking more creatively about how we invest our workforce dollars to get people to work. So we just developed in the last 4 months the LEAP Academy, which
And LEAP stands for.
Ooh,
no.
Great question. LEAP. It includes prosperity. So
it ends with prosperity.
That's right. It ends with prosperity, which is ultimately the goal. We've had 2 cohorts so far, and what we're really doing is working to train people to go into DC government positions, almost like an apprenticeship program for government. It's been remarkably effective. 61% of the people involved in the program have come from east of the river. And the goal, and this is, I think, what I bring from the private sector, is we're going to test a bunch of things out, see what works, and scale it. And LEAP is one of those things. We're going to figure out whether or not we can scale this for even other industries outside of government.
How about something
learn,
simple?
earn, advance, and prosper?
That's right.
Learn, earn, advance, and prosper.
That's
That's
right.
what LEAP means. Yes.
All right. Here's to me, this sounds like a simple idea, particularly for schools east of the river. Why not have a summer jobs program year round?
So we're really excited about that, right? We see this year
or doing something.
Well, both. That's what we're so excited about, us actually doing something. With the expansion of the Summer Youth Employment Program, and certainly the mayor doubling down on the Summer Youth Employment Program, we're really using this as the jump off to expand year-round programming for young people in our city. And that will include a number of things: unpaid internships, paid internships, and work experiences, much more mentoring and engagement to make sure that our young people are workforce ready and prepared. But also, we are working as hard as we can with the folks over at the UDC Community College to stand that up. So there are expanded. There are actually several all over the city. That's right. With the goal of really expanding opportunity for folks to get training while they're in high school. And as you know, and you'll talk to the chancellor when she's here in the coming weeks about this, but she's expanded NAF academies and career and technical education within DCPS, which again will connect young people to real life experience that will move them to careers and being career and college ready.
The Summer Youth Employment Program has long had its skeptics on the council, and that includes opposing plans to expand the program. What do you say to those who question whether the results are worth the cost? I'm 24 years old. I had a summer job here that now that the program has been expanded, come September, I'm unemployed again. What indications are there that being in that summer job will expand opportunity for me after I get sent home again?
It's a great question, and one that we have really pursued and attacked in a really powerful way. Look, we had about 14,000 young people engaged in the Summer Youth Employment Program. Just under 1,000 of those young people are 22 to 24. We've done some things differently this year with the Summer Youth Employment Program. We've expanded work readiness and career training, and we've really made sure that we're getting high quality opportunities for our young people. A couple things to note. I think 60% of the young people in the program, now I know 60% of the young people in the program come from Ward 7 and Ward 8. I was a Summer Youth Employment Program participant 22 years ago when I was 14. And like many in this city, I had opportunities to do other things beyond the Summer Youth Employment Program through my parents' networks, through their friends. So many of our young people don't have that opportunity, and the Summer Youth Employment Program really provides it. But more importantly, I think what we have been able to do with employers like WDC Solar or Enlighten, where you joined us at the beginning of the summer, is really create high quality work experience that will prepare these young people for the careers of tomorrow.
This is very basic stuff for some of the young students.
That's right.
It's where someone who's paying you says you have to dress appropriately to come to work.
Yep.
You have to be here on time.
That's right.
It's not a suggested start time.
That's right.
All this. So those are intangible, sometimes intangible things that people, or I guess they are tangible, that young people get. And it works very well. I know someone called me the other day and said, you got 200 kids warehoused at the Department of Employment Services just sitting in the ground floor auditorium. Mm-hmm. I went over, I didn't see them. So we've, in the past, there's been a lot of wasted time. But is it in fact that the students are involved in this 6 and 7 week, is it 7 or 6?
6 weeks.
6 week program now, really going to get essentially aftercare?
Yes, they are. And in fact,
you'll stay in touch with them?
That's right. So for the 22 to 24-year-old population, we've actually done a fair amount of workforce readiness and preparation work to prepare them for even an event today. We're having a hiring event that's actually happening right now. I'm going to head over there after this, where we have more than 40 employers who've signed up, and they have jobs available. It's not a job fair. We're not cattle calling a bunch of young people and sticking them in a room with people who don't actually have job opportunities. There are more than 300 job opportunities among these 40 employers, and we have about 400 young people coming to participate in that. We each participant in the 22 to 24-year-old program got a success coach who worked with them on resume building, interview skills, how to dress for an interview, who prepped them for interviews. And so we're really proud of the fact that we've really developed a comprehensive program for these young people, and we know it's going to make a real difference in their lives. I just want to tell you 2 things really quickly. I met some young people at WDC Solar, 2 who came to me at the end and said, this program really has saved my life. One, a father of 4, 23 years old, never had a job, is now learning how to install solar roofs, right? And we expect him to get a job out of this program. That employer is going to hire 10 to 12 folks. Another young woman, her boyfriend was killed 2 weeks prior, and the only thing that got her through was her SYEP position. And she learned real tangible, that's right. And she learned real tangible skills. What I'm excited about is Marionberry's vision that the mayor has carried forward is living and doing its job.
Well, put on your headphones because Tony in Washington, D.C. is going to talk about some of the challenges I think you face. Tony, you are on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Kojo. Hi, everyone. I'm a business owner. I opened a business recently in D.C. And over the past year, I've hired easily 50 young people that are DC native. And I've just been amazed. I've been in business all my life, and I've had business in Northern Virginia. I have a place recently in Maryland as well. And I've been amazed at how unready the young people are to work socially. It appears that most are high school graduates, but many of the young people have trouble with the law. They don't really see an advancement path in terms of sticking around and making more
How many of those
and
50
try
young
harder.
people have you been able to retain, Tony?
One.
And what type of work is it? What type of work?
It's a restaurant.
It's a restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is a tough business.
It just seems so difficult to find people that are natives of DC, and maybe this is an issue of gentrification because many seem to come from the Southeast. But in the restaurant industry, it just seems that it's just very difficult.
The restaurant is hotel. The Restaurant Association has run a hospitality high school. Have you gotten students from that school?
I haven't, and I guess my comment is more aimed at how unready these young people have been, and I perhaps it's a comment in the school system or the social environment that it's been a large number of employees, and as I said, I have a place in Maryland. I've had places in Northern Virginia, and I just think more attention needs to be paid at the high school and perhaps the grade school levels for these kids to be socially ready to work with others and to.
Our guest, Courtney Stoughton, describes herself as a proud sixth-generation Washingtonian who lives in the Deanwood neighborhood of Ward 7. How important do you think it is for people like Tony to understand the challenges that young people face, particularly east of the river, and what they need in order to be able to succeed in that restaurant environment?
Yeah, well, the mayor is incredibly committed to making sure that we have the highest quality workforce available, not just in the region, but around the country. We want people to say about District of Columbia residents that you can't get better employees than here. And here are the facts. The Summer Youth Employment Program, the LEAP Academy, and other initiatives out of the Department of Employment Services are actually making that possible. Now, here's what I'll say to Tony specifically. I'm not going to speak to sort of generalizations about all young people in the city, but I was just in the Safeway up the street, and there was a young woman who I know lives in a housing project in Ward 7 working at the Safeway up here. We have so many young people from east of the river and in overlooked and underserved communities who are ready to work today, and in fact are working all over this city, and most certainly not really that much in their communities because the same level of entrepreneurship and retail doesn't exist.
Is there somewhere this restaurant businessman can go to at Employment Services
That's right.
to get the students or the young people that he's looking
who
to
are
hire?
in fact prepared?
Yes, who are in fact prepared. So we have a fantastic business services group at the Department of Employment Services run by a gentleman named Drew Hubbard. He is fantastic. And we also have the Office of Youth Programs run by a gentleman named Jaron Price. We are able to connect employers to high quality employees or potential employees and are delighted to do it. All they have to do is reach out to the Department of Employment Services, and they can come directly through me and come to my office and just shoot me an email at courtney.snowden@dc.gov and we'll get them connected.
Tony, that might be a route you might want to try in the future.
Let us know how it works out.
I'll give it a thank you so much.
Thank you very much for
Tom
your call.
Sherwood at NBC4 in case there's any,
You can call us
in case the doors are slammed in your face or if they're open wide. I'd like to know either one.
Well, you know me, Tom. They'll be open wide.
We'll see.
Most recently, you served as principal of a government relations firm. What was your focus there, and how does that experience inform what you're doing now?
I was at the Raven Group for 11 years, and prior to that, I worked at several nonprofits focused on civil rights and education, and before that, on Capitol Hill. And I worked there.
You've been busy these last 14 years.
I have been busy a little bit, right? This is, again, why I'm so honored to be helping the mayor implement
Okay, that's the last time
her
you get to talk
vision.
about the mayor. She'll be on sometime later.
Whatever
in the
her
year,
name
so-
is, yes.
Mayor-
That's it. You fulfill that
Stop
obligation.
Tom Sherwood. So
I'm gonna ring a bell every time you do it.
you should. I have lots of wonderful things to say about her vision, and her leadership of the city. So good. Give me more opportunities
Ding.
to do it. So just in terms of the Raven Group, the Raven Group is a public affairs and public policy firm, and really I
Liberal
call
policy, liberal,
we're progressive. That's right.
Progressive,
we're
liberal.
progressive. So there I spent a lot of time developing strategies and solving problems for major corporations, governments, nonprofits, and otherwise. And that's really what I think I bring to the table in this position. I have a lot of experience in helping to develop strategies that work. And most importantly, I think I know how to start with an idea, try it out, scale it up if it's working, and abandon it if it's not. And I'm not scared to do that. And I've learned that from working with some of the biggest companies in Silicon Valley, or some governments, and who are doing really innovative work. And so I get to bring that experience into the administration and help start with this fresh start.
Well, one of the things is the small and local business. Was that part of your?
Yeah.
I do hear from people who don't just complain about DCRA, which has improved dramatically over the last 20 years, but it's still daunting. But that small and local businesses, they demonstrated that in front of the Wilson building that their firms are not included in contracts.
In the Certified Business Enterprise Program, these small and local businesses claim that they would like to get in and get contracts with the city too, but they're not.
And the application to even get involved, there's a great deal of bureaucracy. And meanwhile, these are small companies in the city that could hire 1, 2, 3, 5, or 6 people. And they say the city's doors
We're locked out.
Well, locked out.
So we know all too well that small businesses are the economic engines of communities, and in particular will be the one of the drivers that help us better serve and lift up overlooked and underserved communities. So we are committed. Director Anna Harvey is a fantastic leader, has come from the federal government and the Small Business Administration, has now brought all that expertise here into our local government, which is incredibly exciting. In my view, and certainly in the mayor's view, we have to do more to support small businesses. We need to work harder to make sure that we are growing small businesses, particularly resident-owned small businesses in all 8 wards.
And there are some conferences where you've invited businesses in, some entrepreneurs to come in and say, this is how you negotiate the bureaucracy.
That's right. We've done a number of workshops at DSLBD and in the community at the Rise Center and other places in all 8 wards, focused on helping CBE, Certified Business Enterprises, secure more work through government contracts, or helping businesses work to secure a CBE or a Certified Business Enterprise designation or license. But what I would say, and this is an important thing to note, we only have about 1,100 CBEs here in the District of Columbia. And
those are Certified Business Enterprises.
That's right. And historically, the Department of Small and Local Business Development has supported those businesses. Well, we know we have many more businesses than just those that want to do business with government. And so what we have a responsibility to do is to really help grow businesses. But more importantly than just helping them start, we have to help them thrive, sustain themselves over time, because we know they're going to do the hiring. So the director has been focused on 4 things, and that's making sure that we help small businesses grow capacity, get access to capital, that we provide high quality customer service, and that we help them get contracts where appropriate. So we are doing all of those things, and you're going to see even more fun come out of the Department of Small and Local Business Development.
On to the phones again. David in Washington wants to ask about if you're training people for what I consider to be 2 of the higher paying professional occupations in this town. David, your turn.
Yep. Hi there, Kojo and everyone. I'm really glad to be on the line. Thanks everyone for being here. I work with DCPS, and I know that we all spend a lot of energy and dollars preparing students for a college education. That's the mission, getting them college ready. But I was wondering if maybe it's time to change tack and also open up the option of trades training. So looking at training electricians and plumbers.
$100 to press your doorbell. That's right.
Exactly. I mean, I just wrote a check to a plumber for $360.
Me too, David.
Unclog a drain.
Me too, David.
Well,
yeah, David, first of all, I'm a DCPS grad, so I'm always excited to talk to someone who's helping to shape the minds of our young people. So thank you for the work you do at DCPS. I think you're absolutely right. We've got to prepare young people for career, college and career. And we are committed to that. The mayor is committed to it, as is Deputy Mayor Jenny Niles, and of course, the Chancellor, Kaya Henderson.
But plumbers, electricians.
Plumbers, electricians.
Are the labor unions where they have internships, are they committed to taking students?
They are, and in fact have done it with a number of apprenticeships, and the Chancellor with her team has developed a number of academies focused on various trades, in addition to Phelps, which is
Phelps on Benning Road, off of Benning Road.
Which also
RFK.
That's right, which also has a solid career and technical education focus.
Is that the successful school? I went there when it was open, and it was cool because all the infrastructure of the building, the piping and the heating and the water, all the pipes were exposed because it was a living classroom. And the students could actually see what they were talking about rather than reading about it in the book.
Right.
But I haven't been back to see how many students have graduated. Are their jobs is industry
Running out
supporting?
of time.
So that you'd have to ask the chancellor, but I think Phelps is doing well. The last time I was over there, I was blown away at what the young people were working on. Just as I have been when I have traveled around the city to meet these young people in the Summer Youth Employment Program, I have seen our young people really grow and thrive. And we do have some pretty amazing programs available to our young people that we know will help put them on the pathway to the middle class. And so I agree with David that we need to do more, but what we have is pretty substantial as well.
We got an email from John who asks, will you run for office again? For those of you who don't know it, Courtney ran for an at-large seat on the DC Council in the last election. One of the reasons she did that was because there would no longer be a council member who was openly gay. You lost that race, but do you plan on running again?
Well, you know, I lost that race, but I got to tell you, I think I'm the biggest winner. I have had a fantastic opportunity to implement, consistent with the mayor's vision, all of the things that I talked about on the campaign trail, and certainly talked about last time I was here in October. I get to help bring economic opportunity and vibrancy to communities that have been overlooked and underserved. And you remember that's exactly why I got in this race in the race last year.
And there were no at-large East of the River council members, were there?
There were not.
Right. So that's another issue.
That's another issue. So I got to say, I got my hands full with what I'm working on.
You lost the
right
election,
now.
but got the job you wanted.
I lost the election, but got the job I
That could be
wanted.
your speechwriter, but it would be very expensive.
Would
Will
it
you
be, you won't do that for free
Would you
for
be
me?
prepared to run against the mayor in the next election?
Are you kidding me, Kojo Nandi? No
Ding.
way.
Courtney Snowden, she announced today that she's not running against Muriel Bowser in
How
the next
could
election.
I?
She's
can't
running
run-
with.
I
She's-
can't run against someone I admire and who I think is implementing the vision for the city that is going to get us to where
Ring
we
that,
need to
ring
be.
that bell again.
You
ding,
ring it.
ding, ding,
You
ding,
ring it.
ding, ding,
I
ding.
stand by
Courtney
I
that.
want to
Snowden
see stats in 6 months.
is
You know, I'll
DC's
be honored to give them to you, Tom.
Okay.
She is DC's deputy mayor for greater economic opportunity. Courtney Snowden, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, as always, for having me. I always love being here.
We'll be joined shortly by Chap Peterson. He's a Virginia state senator. You can start cranking up your calls for him, 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org. Tom Sherwood, in Maryland, immigration activists are protesting the fact that Governor Larry Hogan is going to comply with the federal program to notify federal authorities about when and where people facing possible deportation will be released from jail. They don't think that the governor or any local officials ought to be in the business of enforcing immigration laws altogether at all. So they demonstrated yesterday. The federal agency says that only immigrants who have been convicted of a serious crime, are involved in a gang, or are considered a threat to national security would be targeted. And in the wake of the slaying last month of Catherine Steinle in San Francisco by a suspect who had been released from custody in April, an individual who was a 7-time felon, I guess it's an uphill battle for immigration activists against Governor Hogan.
Well, it may be for Governor Hogan at this moment, but this is a long-term issue that's rising. There's even, I think, a measure in Congress right now to force the district to abandon what people call sanctuary cities.
Yes.
Where local governments and some state governments say, we are not going to do the work of the immigration service. That if there are immigration issues, then that's a federal responsibility. We're not going to be a subset of the police. That's what's been said around and in Maryland. Now, Governor Hogan has changed it. There's a move among several. It's part of the immigration battle. What to do about the immigrants who are here, both legal and illegal.
Yep.
And all that. So I just think it's the governor will do it, but it's the local police officers, mainly the county police and the city police. It's not just the state police who mostly deal with crime issues, and we'll see how aggressive they are in trying to enforce it. But it's a very serious issue within the immigrant community about whether, if you're a dark brown-skinned person, are you going to be harassed to see if you're an American citizen or not?
You're absolutely correct. It's part of a much larger national and to some extent international issue.
All right.
Johnny.
Can we take a moment just to say how cool it was this morning to watch the American flag rise in Cuba? I don't know if you had a chance to see it or not.
I did not have a chance to see it, but since you have been in Cuba more recently than I have, I suspect that you had a surge of emotion when you saw
Well, I
it.
did, and to see the Secretary of State John Kerry talk about that we should not be at war with each other economically. We should be neighbors, and that just having been there and seen and talked to any number of people and the people who would like to go there, it's a great opportunity for just what we're talking about here: jobs and economic opportunity. It's
And
a really
we're going
good
to see
moment
what
this morning.
happens with the embargo against Cuba, because frankly, for decades, it has made absolutely no
Yes,
sense.
and the
whatsoever.
embargo has not been lifted yet. We've just opened the embassies, and there's a lot more work to be done. There'll be some, I'm sure, some falls, but for the economics of Maryland and Virginia and the district, there are business opportunities there that perhaps we can then take advantage of.
When we were in Cuba in 2001, there was a representative there from the Georgia Port Authority, because
Mhm.
they are looking forward to when
And there is
the
some
embargo
trade.
ends.
I'm not sure how it works, but even the businesses in Virginia, there may be some in Maryland who, in fact, get business into Cuba. But I just,
And
excuse
that
me, let me say
representative
that.
from the Georgia State Port Authority had very long, late night sessions with Fidel Castro, because he was and is Hank Aaron. So,
Oh, wow.
yes,
Oh, good. I bet they smoked some of those cigars.
Oh,
The
yes.
Savannah Long cigars. That,
Joining us now by phone is Chap, and if you don't know who Hank Aaron is, go look it up. Joining us now is Chap Peterson. He is a Virginia state senator. He's a Democrat representing District 34, which includes the city of Vienna and Fairfax. Senator Peterson, thank you very much for joining us.
Good after, Kojo. Good to have you. Thanks for having me on.
You've had a lot to say about the redistricting process in Virginia, which begins with a special session and a public hearing on Monday afternoon in Richmond. You plan to introduce a plan you say would make 6 of the state's 11 congressional districts competitive. It's based on a map that won a student competition. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. In 2011, there was a competition amongst the Virginia universities to come up with the best redistricting map. And when I say best, it would be one that would comply with federal law and then would be compact and contiguous. In other words, grouping people together by a geographic logic, and then finally would try and develop competitive districts so that the parties would be as evenly matched as possible. Now, there is some dispersion in Virginia where Republicans tend to live downstate, or downstate voters tend to be more Republican, and Northern Virginians tend to be more Democratic. But taking that all into account, the students tried to create 11 generally evenly matched districts, and they did a fabulous job. And I have it on my website what they came up with, and there was a winning entry which was submitted by the University of Virginia, which is my alma mater, and it won this competition, which is, obviously a non-binding, non-legislative competition. But now that we have this opportunity for redistricting, I thought, wouldn't it be apt to take their handiwork and submit that as legislation and have the General Assembly take it up?
well, Mr. Peterson, Tom Sherwood from Channel 4 News here. I'm
Yes, sir.
It seems to me that one thing the students left out is the key issue in redistricting: politics. They created theoretically a very good district system, but we all know that redistricting involves the politics of who's in and who's out, and who gets to run against your neighbor or who doesn't.
Well,
So how do you put forward a program that doesn't have any politics recognized in it?
well, you can't, but here's kind of the brilliance of it. And again, I don't take credit for it, but I'm just sort of the messenger here. Virginia right now and soon will be at an impasse because we have a legislature that's Republican, and they're going to promote a map that's going to protect the 8 Republican incumbents in Congress because they have an 8-3 advantage, and clearly they want to keep that. We have a Democratic governor. Legislation, in order to become law, has to be signed by him, so he has no reason to sign that bill. So you've got the immovable force and the irreplaceable object, hitting each other, and at some point, they're going to have to look at some alternative to just, I'm going to maximize Republicans or I'm going to maximize Democrats. And I think my plan gives at least a template for an alternative. That's not to say it's not going to be manipulated. And, I'm sure they're going to take I didn't take into account the residency of the current congressmen and women, but that's not to say they couldn't. But I think at some point where you have a Republican legislature and a Democratic governor, they could be at an impasse. And remember, they have to come up with a solution by September 1st, or the whole matter gets kicked back to a federal judge.
I know you didn't take into account where the current members of Congress happen to reside, because your proposal will mean that 4 sitting members would no longer live in the districts they represent. But talk a little bit about the mechanics and the process that legislators are going to be undertaking. This data is from the 2010 census, even though
Right.
some population changes have taken place in the past 5 years.
Right, and under under both the U.S. Constitution and under our state constitution, we redistrict based on the decennial census, which was the decennial census was 2010. So, even though those numbers have changed from 2010 to 2014, which would probably be the last. I mean, now we get annual estimates from the Weldon Cooper Institute. We're still bound to the 2010 census because remember, we're essentially drafting districts as if we were in a time machine in 2011. The 2011 map that we approved has been ruled by a federal judge to have violated the Voting Rights Act. So we essentially have to go back in time to 2011 and draw a new map based on those statistics from 2010 that will comply with the Voting Rights Act. So again, I use the 2010 decennial census. Now, whether or not we update it to 2014 or whether or not we even required to, I'm not sure. But to me, again, what we have to do is what we have to do right in 2015 is what we did wrong in 2011, which is draw maps based on the 2010 census data.
Chap Peterson is our guest. He's a Virginia state senator. He's a Democrat representing District 34, which includes the city of Vienna and Fairfax. If you've got questions or comments for him, you can go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream there, or call us at 800-433-8850.
I have a question. WAMU's Michael Pope talked to Dave Albo, a Republican member of the House. I'm sure you know him well.
Sure.
He says that he's got 28 years of government style experience. He thinks he can draw districts that are better than what students can do, even well-intentioned students. Again, it goes back to the politics issues. How do you get someone like Dave Albo to go along with your plan?
Well, first of all, I was hoping you were going to ask me to comment on that comment he made, but
well, you can go ahead.
Well, you may comment on that.
I mean, listen, I've been in the legislature since 2001, so that's 15 years at this point, and I can't even program my own VCR. Okay, so this is
what is a VCR?
Well, what is a VCR?
that's a museum piece now.
But the CD player, DVR, I can't do any of that stuff. Fortunately, I have teenagers in my house, and they do all the sort of worthwhile activities. But the point being is that all of this stuff is computer driven in today's day and age. So I can look at a map. I know where people live. I have a good feel for this state, at least from a bird's eye view as to what the various regions are. But you really need people with the expertise to sort of crunch the numbers and come up with the maps and these kids did a heck of a job. And again, that's not to say we don't have to amend or modify their handiwork, but I think they took basically 11 districts that are logical, that are that are population-wise equal, and that are geographically contiguous, and that's not easy to do. Well, I think it's a good baseline to work from.
I was going to say it could be a baseline to work with, but
sure.
Michael Pope was also telling me before the program that there's a great fear among Republicans that if they compromise in any way with the Democrats to come up with a new redistricting plan, that McAuliffe, the governor, will veto whatever they come up with and force it into the courts where the Democrats think they might get a better deal anyway. So why should the Republicans cooperate with that scheme?
Well, if they don't cooperate, then they will go back to court. I mean, if the parties don't cooperate, and I'm issuing the same challenge to the governor as I do to the Republicans in the legislature. If the parties don't cooperate, then they'll go back to the federal judge, and a federal judge not beholden to anybody. I mean, he's got a lifetime job. He could put any of our Congress people, Democrat or Republican, out on the street by simply coming up with his own map. And for all I know, he might be on the radio listening to this show right now.
So you guys, you're called into a session on the 17th. The Republicans wanted to delay it until the courts could do some more, but you're going to meet on the 17th. How long do you anticipate? And that's Monday. How long do you anticipate the legislative session will have to last?
I think Monday you're going to have some hearings. I'm hoping there will be a hearing on my bill, but I don't expect any decisions to be made Monday. I think what will happen is there will be an initial session. We'll, take up the Supreme Court issues, and then I think the parties, we will probably adjourn for 3 days. And again, like I said, I'm a Democrat. We're in the minority. The Republicans have the power, but they're going to have to meet with the governor and come up with some solution here. And, I won't be at the table for that conversation. I understand that. But again, I think what I'm trying to do is give people some options so they can say, well, look, let's take Peterson's bill, but let's slice and dice, these precincts, and which is fine. And but at least use that as a template so we can get back to having logical congressional districts and not some of the craziness we have right now.
But as Kojo said, you're asking people who have worked their entire lives in the political world to get to where they are to give up essentially their seats and run again.
Well, you know what? I've been
for the good of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, and also, call me crazy, but nobody has a lifetime entitlement to be in politics, whether they're in Congress or in the Assembly. I mean, at least the position I hold, we get paid $18,000 a year, and if I couldn't hold it any longer, sure, I'd move on to do something else. I mean, so I don't think that should be the incentive that drives this. I think, again, we got to come up with something logical, and there's going to be some losers in this process. I'm not averse to that, but trust me, if we give it to a federal judge, they're guaranteed to be some losers.
Speaking of the governor and the legislature, they're in a bit of a standoff right now over a Supreme Court justice for the state of Virginia. The governor has nominated a woman. Republicans in the legislature says we're going to reject her. First time in a long time they'd be rejecting a sitting judge, but they have an African-American judge that they feel, and former Governor Wilder is blasting Governor McAuliffe for not consulting with the legislature before making this appointment. Where do you come down on this?
Well, you put me on the spot.
You're between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I'm a practicing attorney, and I actually have a case that will be going up on appeal. So I really don't want to comment, and probably I think I may well end up abstaining on that vote for reasons that have nothing to do with the merits of the persons and have to do with a unique case that I have pending right now.
How about? Well, then I'll ask you something. The state just had its annual sales tax holiday because, I guess for whatever reason, you've called it stupid. And you joked about how you and your son bought the Redskins jerseys down at the training camp in Richmond. Right. And you saved what, 6 cents or whatever, $6, $6,
6% or 5.3%. I thought it was silly. I mean, listen, retail prices are so easily manipulated, and to say to somebody, well, you go back and you'll save sales tax. Well, as I said in my post, if you wait a couple of weeks, you might get it 40% or half off. And I just think those types of, it's a gimmick, and it costs the state revenue, and it's not doing the consumers any benefit. And I just think it's silly. I really do.
Well, speaking of that jersey, you bought one for you and one for your son. It was for the team. A lot of people, you formed the Redskins caucus there to push back against the people who want the team to change its name. How's the caucus doing?
It's the Pride Caucus.
We're going to be doing fine if they can win some games.
I was asking to see if you bring up last night's preseason.
The caucus is its welfare is directly related to the team's welfare, and for me,
so if the team loses, you'll agree to change the name. Is what you're saying?
What's that?
If the team continually loses, you'll agree to change the name. Is that what you're saying?
That might be the biggest respect.
For me, I'm a Redskins fan. I always will be. I grew up with the Redskins and John Riggins and Darryl Green. I mean, they were my heroes, and so
suit them up.
Hopefully, the team will win some games, and that's where I stand.
Let me ask you one serious question about this, because I've had to cover this. I've been to the Museum of the American Indian downtown off the mall and all of that, and one of the American Indian persons there said to me, whoever is for keeping this name, just ask him a simple question. If you walk up to an American Indian you do not know, would you say, "Hey, Redskin, how are you doing?"
I wouldn't say, "Hey, Indian, how are you doing?" either.
Right.
If I came up to somebody who was Scandinavian, I wouldn't say, "Hey,"
or even if it was a friend of yours who was an American Indian. Now, a lot of people thought the word Indian shouldn't be used, but the museum is called the National Museum of the American Indian. How are we going to get past this? If some people believe that the owner, Dan Snyder, will in fact change the name when he reaches agreement to build a stadium either at RFK or Loudoun County.
Well, I mean, that may be your supposition.
No, I'm just
never heard that.
The result of my reporting.
Profound investigative reporting. Here is
All right. Well,
Here-
Okay.
you appear to know more about it than I do, but I'm
Here-
just a red.
You just want the team to win, right?
here's Sam in Herndon, Virginia. Sam, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for taking my call, Kojo. I had a question for the Virginia State Senator. I was curious if, I know recently the Supreme Court ruled that an independent commission could be used in order to set up electoral districts. Forget what state that was in. So I was curious if you thought that might be a long-term solution to Virginia's gerrymandering issue.
Well, thanks for the call. I think it would be great. The problem with independent commissions is they have to be staffed by somebody, and typically they're going to get staffed by, the names will be nominated by the legislature themselves. So, by and large, you're going to get people that are handpicked to be on it. In order to do that, we'd have to change our Constitution, because right now our Constitution gives the legislature the unique ability to draw districts. Listen, I'd be all in favor of it. I'd vote in favor of it. I think it'd be hard to do, just because you'd have to get a constitutional change through both electoral bodies. But again, I just look at 2015 as we have a unique opportunity. We have a Republican legislature. We have a Democratic governor. We have a federal court that's already ruled that our map is unconstitutional. So this is really kind of a unique window in time to say, hey, let's go back to the drawing board and see if we can find something that everybody dislikes.
Sam, thank you for your call. Let's look ahead to 2016 for a second. You think former
sir.
Virginia Senator Jim Webb might have what it takes in the race for president?
Well, Kojo, y'all can tease me a little bit. You see those polls where it says Jim Webb's at 1%, and you're probably talking to the 1%.
I think so.
And I listen. I get some good-natured ribbing. I've always been a big fan of Mr. Webb, and dating back to the 1980s. So, it's hard to get traction in this day and age, and he certainly does not probably fit the model of someone that's going to fire up Democratic primary audiences.
But you
I
think
get
he should?
that. Excuse me?
But you think he should? He
Oh,
has what it
absolutely.
takes.
I think in terms of foreign policy and defense knowledge, I think he's outstanding. I think when he was a U.S. Senator, he did some very progressive things on criminal reform, criminal sentencing, GI Bill. I thought he was an outstanding U.S. Senator, and in a lot of ways, because he didn't fit the stereotype.
One Democrat I know said, well, my concern is that we'd elect, and he likes Webb. He said he'll get elected president and then decide not to run for a second term.
Well, maybe that's not the worst thing.
Is anything up in the
You only got about 30 seconds.
All right, special legislature? Anything coming up in the special session other than the judge that Kojo mentioned and the redistricting? Anything important to Northern
I just
Virginia?
got emailed the procedural rules from the clerk, and we are limited to basically judicial nominations and the redistricting. So that will be it.
Jack Peterson is a Virginia state senator. He's a Democrat representing District 34, which includes the city of Vienna and Fairfax. Senator Peterson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me.
Tom
Take care.
Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. You thought the chap was too familiar a name.
Yeah, I want to know what that is. I'm going to go home and have a little glass of rum and celebrate Cuba.
Thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nnamdi, a mojito.